I wanted to say a few words about Yizkor and Kadish and other memorial prayers. Now, it's known that Kadish, the Kadish that we say many times during the prayer, originally never meant to be related to anything that has to do with raising the soul, what is called Leilu Nishmat. It was not originally intended in any significant sense to be something that helps the soul of a deceased. What we have is in some midrashim, it's not even mentioned in the Talmud. Kadish is mentioned in the Talmud many times, but the idea that Kadish is said by a Yatom, a person who lost a parent, that idea is found in some midrashim in various versions. And the Yatom, orphan that is saying Kadish, usually is mentioned together with doing some other mitzvot. In some versions of the various midrashim, he's saying Barhu, or reading Haftorah, or learning Torah. So it's almost never mentioned just as specifically saying Kadish. And the simple meaning is that anytime a descendant of a person does extra mitzvot, he helps the soul of the dead, because if not for this person who gave birth to him, this child wouldn't have existed. So whether it's father or mother, once they pass away, if their descendants do mitzvot and specifically have an intent to that it will be beneficial for the souls of their ancestors, that it may have some effect, helping raise the soul, what's called Leilu Nishmat. That's all we could see from these midrashim, but it doesn't specifically mention Kadish as the one thing that should help in particular way. And by the way, Rachamim Shulchan Aruch also says that it's even better to pray Shmona Esrei, the repetition of Shmona Esrei, to be the Chazan. According to him, this is more important than Kadish, because you get more zichuyot, more special mitzvot, that people answer Amen and answer Kiddusha. But the idea that it's Kadish specifically that helps the soul of the dead, that comes from Arizal, one of the greatest, maybe the greatest Jewish mystics, maybe Kabbalist. So he seems to imply that a specific Kadish, not any Kadish by the way, specific Kadish closer to the end, that's called Kadish Yatom, that's the one that helps specifically raise the soul of the dead. And that seems to be the custom, especially among Sephardim, that the value of this Kadish. Now, on the other hand, there is such a thing as memorial prayers, and those ones, none of them were composed in the times of Chazal, or at least we don't know which ones were composed when. There are different nusachayot between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, and the Sephardim generally call it Hashkava or Azkara, and they usually ask to pronounce these things on various days, either on the day of recite, or it could be on a Shabbat, or on any day. Especially when a person is called to Torah, for instance. But Ashkenazim have a specific minhag to remember the souls of the dead on 4 specific occasions, besides the recite. And that is what we call Yizkor. It's a prayer that starts with the words Yizkor, may Hashem remember, may God remember the soul of such and such. And by the word remember, of course, we don't mean that Hashem forgets anything. Hashem doesn't forget anything, but the point is that we want to kind of make sure that, or ask Hashem to be merciful to the soul, and we use human terms, remember meaning put his eye on in a kind of positive way, as the prayer continues. That we're asking that the soul will be with other righteous people, under the wings of divine presence, something like that. These are not very long, relatively simple prayers. Yizkor and Kel Malei Rachamim that goes on afterwards. So the custom is to say those prayers 4 times a year. And that's what I want to discuss. We just had one of those days a few days ago at the end of Pesach. Now, what are those 4 days and why were they chosen? So one day that seems obvious is Yom Kippur, when all the people are being judged. So the people who are dead also, in a sense, are being judged. So it makes sense, and by the way, a lot of people who, generally people whose parents are dead already, or at least one of the parents passed away, they leave a special candle before Yom Kippur. Of course, on Yom Kippur we don't light any fire, just like on Shabbat, but before Yom Kippur we lit various kinds of candles for various reasons, and one of the candles that's lit is for the deceased relatives, if a person has deceased relatives, deceased parents. So the Yortzeit candle, what's called, Yortzeit literally means in Yiddish the time of the year, meaning it's the anniversary. Yortzeit just means anniversary. But they call it Yortzeit candles even when it's not the anniversary, and the anniversary is simply on the day of Yom Kippur. The candle is lit, so it goes for the entire day. It's usually more than 24 hours that it goes on, so they lit it before Yom Kippur and it goes on for the entire day. That's one day. But the other three are not so obvious. The other three is the last day of Pesach, the last day, second day of Shavuot, that's going to come in less than 2 months, and another day is the pre-last day of Sukkot, meaning really it's not Sukkot. Technically speaking, Shmini Atzeret is a separate holiday, but we kind of relate to it as the end of Sukkot. It's not really Sukkot. Biblically, only 7 days are Sukkot, and then there is a special holiday, Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day, which consists for us outside of the land of Israel of 2 days. The Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah is the day of the second day of Shmini Atzeret that's observed outside the land of Israel. In Israel, Simchat Torah and Shmini Atzeret is all the same day. So the Shmini Atzeret, the first day of Shmini Atzeret, is the last of the 3 regalim when it's a custom for people who lost their parents, or one of the parents, to recite the special prayers called Yizkor. So the question is why? So I saw an interesting explanation that the main reason is actually not the actual recital so much in itself, but rather the fact that people will give tzedakah afterwards. Now again, we don't handle money on Yom Tov, on holidays we don't touch money, it's all muktzah, but we usually the people who recite these prayers, they say that they will give a donation for the sake of the soul of the deceased. So on those 3 days we read exactly the same parsha of the Torah, the chapter of the Torah that's read on those 3 days outside the land of Israel. The last day of Pesach, the last day of Shavuot, and pre-last day of the first day of Shmini Atzeret. So those 3 times is the parsha that we read from Sefer Dvarim, which talks about all 3 holidays, the main 3 holidays, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. It does not talk specifically of Shmini Atzeret, but it is chosen still to be read on Shmini Atzeret as well. So that's the parsha that we read on those 3 occasions from Re'eh, from Parshat Re'eh. And it starts with the Maaserot, the giving of tithes. So tzedakah is mentioned in a sense, and because of that, it will remind people to give tzedakah for the sake of the deceased. Interesting idea. Now, that makes it more complex for the land of Israel, because there they don't read these Parshiot, and they don't have the second day of Shavuot and the last day of Pesach. They have the 7th day of Pesach, but not the 8th. So the question is, when should they say these prayers? It's discussed in the poskim. They say that, okay, so do it on the previous day, even though the reason for it would not apply really. But whatever the case may be, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying this prayer at any time. It's not Kadish which needs a minyan. You could say it at home, you could say it at any time, you could say it on a weekday. If you forgot or didn't go to the synagogue in one of these holidays, or for whatever reason didn't say it, or you were praying with Sephardim who don't have this minhag of saying Yizkor, there's absolutely nothing wrong. It does not need a minyan, and it can be said at any time, anywhere. And on this I'm going to end, and if you like this video, please press like.